A trifecta of data coming in for the Bulls. Warren Buffett takes a stake in Ulta. Markets healthy everywhere. Matt and Mark Justice bringing you tackle today. All of the top news stories across the market. Matt, we're seeing a broad-based rally after the data. We'll talk about the data here in a second. But NASDAQ coming up to the 50. This thing has been pure V-shape at this point. Break down the technicals for us on this Thursday.
Yeah, it has been V-shaped recovery so far, and that's one of the three reversals we've been tracking over the course of the last week and a half at Tackle Trading. We talk about it extensively in the Traders Lounge every single morning with the pro members. But for the Tackle Today video here, just a real good recovery as it does come up to the 50-period moving average in the NASDAQ. And that's that last point on the chart on the NASDAQ where you're really looking at the market recovering from that initial drop from just last week. And I know it's been a journey, but just in the last 2 weeks, that's what we've done. We've dropped fairly aggressively, and we have recovered that price action. Now the question becomes, what patterns form next at that 50-period moving average? A high base, a pullback here would be really, really, really good. Now, when you're looking at the overall broad market, obviously, with the NASDAQ leading the charge, and that's kind of been the base case over the course of the last week. The S&P 500 obviously looking at a breakout here. It's breaking not only out of the 50-period moving average here today, it's showing a very healthy sign technically against the entire marketplace. You're also breaking out of that trend line that has been working as the bearish resistance zone, which means this candle here on the S&P 500 is the candle that eliminates the previous bearish downtrend, which means the S&P 500 is no longer in a bearish downtrend in the short term and now has weekly confirmation back on the bull side, which means it's a little bit stretched in the immediacy of the short term, but the daily time frame and now the weekly time frame is kind of back to be realigned, and we can look at it simply from a bullish perspective.
Yeah, and this power move in markets right now is on the back of economic data. There have been a lot of recessionary worries over the last several weeks. This narrative kicked off a couple of weeks ago after a string of negative labor market data and economic data got Goldman, JP Morgan to raise their recessionary possibilities. Data came in straight for the bulls today. Good news is good news. We saw retail sales not only exceed expectations, they exceeded every single major bank's expectations. It was higher than any expectations. So on the economic side, consumer worries, that came in very favorable. But there's also been worries about the labor market. Following 2 weeks ago, the data where unemployment claims jumped, the unemployment rate claim percentage jumped. Well, jobless claims also came in very favorable for the bulls today, showing a decline. Was mixed in other economic data. But Matt, this was a pure win for the bulls. You know, good news is good news when you've had recessionary worries, and the markets are certainly celebrating that. Do you have anything additional to add on that?
No, it's just a real good narrative week for the Bulls,
Oh,
honestly.
it's just been a fantastic narrative week for the bulls.
There was concern coming into this week on the recessionary side. You mentioned Goldman Sachs. They went up to a 25% probability of a recession this year based on that labor market data that you mentioned. I wonder if they're going to reassess that thought after the last 2 weeks, and specifically after this week, where you get inflationary data that basically confirms the Fed is going to be cutting in September, and then you get some real good reprieve on the retail sales side of the equation. Initial claims is a good data point for the bulls, but I wouldn't call it a great situation. It's a weekly reprieve on the labor side of the equation, but there's been a lot of concern on retail, and retail came through here today very aggressively with really good beat on against expectation there. No doubt about that, Mark.
Yeah, and we headed to a very light economic stretch as we head into Jackson Hole next week. So huge narrative week for the bulls. Not a lot of economic data that can potentially counter that as we head into Jackson Hole next week. We'll preview that in the Trading Justice podcast. But while we await Jackson Hole, going to be a lot of individual stock stories. What do you have for us today?
Well, and that certainly happens as you come to the conclusion of earnings season, as you start to get a little bit more stocks in the news type conversations. And we got a little bit of that here today. We got Walmart's earnings. They came out with a pretty decent earnings report. They did officially beat the expectation by 3%. They also beat on the revenue side. They increased their Q3 EPS guidance by 1.3%. And that was enough to send Walmart up. That increasing guidance, it was the number one data point this week. You couple on the retail side of the equation, the consumer side of the equation, Walmart beating earnings here, increasing guidance. Couple that with an economic report on the retail sales equation. That's a good couple data points on the consumer. Nike was also in the news after a really bad kickstart to earnings season. Nike sold off really, really aggressively. Bill Ackman took a position after that 4%. And so Nike's having a pretty good day. And that's coming after a really good short-term reversal type situation. And so Bill Ackman certainly looking at that from a technical perspective as much as a fundamental perspective. And then Ulta Beauty is also in the news, and that surged quite aggressively, up 13%. After it was announced that Warren Buffett took a $266 million stake in the company during the second quarter. And anytime Buffett touches something, it usually does get that nice little price love there. When you are looking at it from a technical perspective, Walmart gapped up and now it's selling against the gap, a little bit of exhaustion gap type feel when you do gap up as strong as Walmart did, but then the candle starts to sell. You would be looking at that as a little bit of a gap fill, but not too concerning. It's a really good day for Walmart in general. On the Nike side of the equation, like I said, they had a terrible earnings report, but then a beautiful daily reversal. And then as that news came out, it just sparked a confirmation candle, put Nike on reversal territory. Any bullish retracement flag-based pattern could look good for Nike. And then on the Ulta side, obviously Buffett took the position. And when you're Buffett and you're a deep value hunter, you don't care if the stock is in a bearish downtrend. You don't care if the stock went from 575 to 320. You probably love that. Buffett takes a position. And what's interesting about Ulta here is you got a very good technical resistance zone on the daily chart, about 375. You could easily look for development at that point in any type of reversal situation. If you want to look at Ulta the same way Buffett does, I would start with pattern development around 375. And that's all we
And
got for stocks in the news today.
if you think stocks are the only ones partying, you would be mistaken. This recession narrative has been very heavy into commodities. We're seeing copper up big. We're seeing silver up big. We're seeing oil up as much as the S&P percentage terms. Some real different formations than we've seen in commodities for a while.
Yeah, when you are looking at copper here, copper's having a really good day, up 2.8% here today, and it's really looking fairly decent against that head and shoulders call out from the other day in the Tackle Today video. Keep an eye on 4.2. Again, that's kind of the reversal trigger point for confirmation. When you're looking at silver here, we were looking at a similar type situation in terms of the overall development around that 200-day moving average. Silver decides to bucket and break right back up above that 20-period moving average. When you're looking at it on a weekly chart, though, it's not going to look very good. You got some overhead there. And so with that development that you saw here today, I honestly kind of think it kind of messed up silver's overall development in the quality of the reversal pattern, because I'd love to see a standard reversal here. Copper looking pretty good right now against that 4.2 level. We'll see if we can break that in a traditional reversal. On the gold side of the equation here today, obviously, when you have a really good day in the marketplace and bulls are partying like it's 1999, typically speaking, gold's going to take a turn to the downside there. especially when you're talking about economic beats and the dollar up in that environment.
No, everything is awesome. Gold usually sells off, you know.
Very aggressively, but those investors in gold right
Yeah,
now
they
are
it
about as
is
stubborn as it gets, and I am all here for it. So keep an eye on the 2,500 breakout, looking at a multiple time frame situation against gold. I'm very impressed that gold did hold up against that type of bullish party here today. And then on the crude oil side of the equation, forming a little bit of a
yeah,
flag here, and I
Matt, this
like
is
that.
one of my sneaky
I
favorite
love
patterns in the market right now.
inside candle
Yeah,
analysis with an increase in support level. It's the first time I've liked crude in
yeah,
a while here.
it's a sneaky good chart, bro.
For those of you who are a little bit new to tackle, I'm just going to ask the question. Tackle trading will understand it. Mark, did it catch the 9? I don't know, but we're gonna have to we're gonna have to traverse that road. But that's all we got here for the Tackle Today video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully it's helping you navigate the financial world on a day in, day out basis. Coach Mark, go ahead and send us out.
Yeah, listen, we're going to continue these conversations, look at specific plays that we can do in our Traders Lounge today. Come join us for the Traders Lounge and all of our pro content and our fantastic reports by simply signing up for a 15-day free trial at tackletrading.com.